welcome back. Welcome back. No, long time no see. I'm so sorry about that at least 2.5 year delay since 2023. I sincerely apologize. Welcome back to the channel. It is Epictastic Joshua. I talk movies, TV, music, and anime. Finally getting back on the Martin Scorsese review train after that little delay, and I reviewed 2 of his movies so far, which was his directorial efforts and some of his movies I've done in the past, but I realized that I am very late to completing this director's review series, so I decided to bunch 3 of these movies in reviews. And like I said, this is going to be a much more easier for me to do, because the last one we left off with was New York, New York, about 11 months ago. So we have 3 of his movies here to talk about. I reviewed his 2 directorial efforts. I reviewed Flower Moon, I reviewed The Irishman, Mean Streets, Alice Doesn't Leave Here Anymore, and Silence. But it's time to get back into the groove of these. So we're going to start and talk about 3 of his movies here. So we have Raging Bull, we have The King of Comedy, and then we have After Hours. So this one is going to be a very one that is going to be an interesting video, to say the least, all in voiceover. So this is going to be a very interesting video. But before I get started, if you guys are new to the channel, all my social media links are in the description box down below. I am so sorry about that little delay in 11 months. I really meant to get back into it, but just things happen and such, and even more things that's happening personally I don't want to touch on, but I do all I can for you guys. So here we are when it comes to it. All my social media links are in the description box down below. If you'd like to follow me on my Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, Snapchat, Blue Sky, Threads. Also, audio versions of these videos mostly will be on Spotify. That way you can have something for that long drive home, or for those long days of work if you want to hear me talk. So that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get this started. Also, my Amazon wish list in the description box down below if you'd like to send me anything. And also, if you'd like to send me any money to my Chime or Cash App, you can do those safely. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get this started. And we're gonna start off with the first Scorsese movie to talk about in 11 months. And we're gonna start off with Raging Bull. So Raging Bull was released in 1980, and this was directed by Martin Scorsese. Written by Paul Schrader and Bartek Martin, and based on Raging Bull, based by Jake LaMotta. And this stars Robert De Niro. We also have Joe Pesci, Kathy Moriarty, Nicholas Colasanto in his final film performance, Teresa Saldana, and Frank Vincent and John Turturro in his film debut. And simply the premise of this movie is that we're following the career of Jake LaMotta and his rise and fall in the boxing scene, and his turbulent personal life beset by rage and jealousy. And wow, this is one of Martin Scorsese's finest achievements in his filmography. This is incredible filmmaking here. I love this movie. This is a brilliant film, but also this is a very powerful and emotionally devastating and compelling film that I just feel like it's so good in terms of the direction and the writing. How can you describe what this movie is without being spoon-headed to you how good this movie is? This is great stuff. I really enjoyed, for one, I gotta say the directing of this movie, because the directing in this movie is incredible, of course. I think the directing is really good here. And I think Martin Scorsese, he pulled out a lot of stops. This was at a time where Martin Scorsese, he was pretty down on his luck. He didn't think he didn't have it in him to direct another movie, and he was just pretty much going through a freaking drug addiction, of course, at the time. He drove himself into deep depression after the disastrous reception of New York, New York. Fortunately, he was able to get back up and recover because his direction here is incredible in this here. This is one of his top tier films. You could tell that Scorsese worked hard to get back on track and showed with his direction, which is gritty, it's bleak, but it's also pretty truthful. And the cinematography being black and white here. And Robert De Niro gets a much deserved win, an Academy Award, for playing Jake LaMotta, who, while he is definitely unlikable as this celebrity that he's playing, falling from grace by the minute, you can tell that Robert De Niro's passion is really well done there, and he just commits to it. And De Niro, his Oscar is well deserved. The fact that he gained 60 pounds to reflect the character's later years, which he gained weight, shows how passionate that he is about this role. And this movie also made Joe Pesci a household name, and this would be a major turning point for De Niro, Pesci, and Scorsese, because they all really gave their A game, and they all really brought their committed performances here. No one in this cast is very bad. No one in this cast gives a very terrible performance. And Pesci gets to show why he's typecasted in these type of roles. And I thought he did a really good job in the role. You also have Teresa Saldana and Frank Vincent, who are great. Kathy Moriarty and John Turturro in their film debuts, which they are incredible in. And they each do a very substantial, great job in their performance. And Nicholas Colasanto, for his final film performance, does a really good job as well. There's not a lot of music in this movie aside from songs chosen for the soundtrack, but that's what Scorsese does. He doesn't like to use a musical score all that much, and it's very rare when he does. The cinematography in this movie is incredible. He really does commit to himself in the cinematography here. There's some great shots in the ring, but also you get some great shots when it comes to what's going on in the personal life of these two guys, especially Jake, how his boxing tension with his brother affects him, and how his anger and rage builds up, especially between his wife and such, and the problematic relationship there, and the deteriorating fall and rise of his career. Paul Schrader is able to take us into this character's mind and what he's feeling, and eventually when he gets to a point where he's just so fed up, he can't really take it anymore. And so it just shows a lot of what we are seeing when it comes to him, and I was very impressed with the way it turned out here. And it's emotional, it's heartbreaking, it's devastating, but it's also truthful in what it's going for. And it doesn't shy away, and that's the thing I love about this movie, is that you have a director like Martin Scorsese, and you have writers like Paul Schrader. They don't shy away from the harshness here. They pretty much put you in, do the ringer with this character, and you're there every step of the way. And I feel like if it hadn't been for Scorsese and Paul Schrader, as well as the actors involved, I don't think this would be anywhere as good as we have right now. Because what you're having to see, while some of this is very hard to watch, you are seeing pretty much someone who's at his breaking point. And the movie always finds ways to explore the inner rage that builds up inside of our lead character, which is very fascinating. and it's one of the great character studies in the movies. It's an amazing character study. If I'd made a list of movies with a great character study, I wouldn't even know where to start, because there's so many movies I've seen that has great character studies, and this would be at the number 10, because you see someone who is being pushed to their breaking point in the way this character is, and they don't shy away from it whatsoever. I will say there's a reason why this is one of the most acclaimed movies of all time, and further puts Scorsese on the map that he frequently is on today. Even if some of his movies are a little too long or such, but that's the point with Scorsese, is that I just have to get used to. I've been getting used to it since I've watched all through his filmography and completed his filmography. And this movie just, it hits you emotionally in terms of the way this movie ends. It's angry, it's pretty aggressive, and this is hard to watch at times, but it is top tier Martin Scorsese at his finest, and that is something I gratefully have to give the film a lot of credit for. So that, I think, is really well done here. I will say, in terms of the ending, I don't think the ending is going to be for everyone, because of course the ending, of course, is going to be heartbreaking for people. And while some people may not like the first act find it a little slow, I think it's important for us to go through that first act. This is an essential for movie lovers, future movie lovers, cinephiles, and even if you're not the biggest cinephile, you can definitely watch this movie. And I'll say this. This is an example of how you bounce back from something that wasn't so great in the first place. This is a prime example of that, and I'm very happy that Martin Scorsese was able to bounce back, because otherwise we wouldn't have movies like Hugo, or Raging Bull, or Casino, or Goodfellas, Wolf of Wall Street, The Aviator, The Departed, or even Killers of the Flower Moon. No matter what I think of that movie, he was able to bounce back and hit just as hard getting back into his recovery. And I will say that is a hell of an accomplishment for a director of this caliber. And so in conclusion, I have to say this film is a brilliant, emotional, but devastating look at someone who is pretty much at his breaking point, but at the same time, just a wonderful story about a boxer dealing with the ups and downs of everything in his life. But I will say, when it comes to this film, this is overall a phenomenal film, and definitely in my favorite of Martin Scorsese. This is overall a masterpiece of the 80s and an overall phenomenal, fantastic film. And because of everything I'm saying, I have literally no complaints when it comes to this. For every bit of the great things I have, I'm gonna go ahead and give this a Spider-Verse seal of approval. So next up we have is The King of Comedy, which is once again directed by Martin Scorsese, of course. This is a few years after Raging Bull was his comeback, and this was in 1982. This stars Robert De Niro in their second collaboration together, Jerry Lewis, Tony Reynolds, Diane Abbott, and Sandra Bernard. And the premise of The King of Comedy exactly is an aspiring comic named Robert Pugh attempts to achieve success in show business by stalking his idol, which is a late-night talk show host who craves his own privacy. Sounds familiar, isn't it? Joker, yeah, you can definitely see where that movie guy's influence is from. But here I will say this. When I first saw this one, I gave this one I was pretty high on it back in 2020 when I first saw it. But now, when I rewatched it in 2023, this moved up a lot, considering the fact that Joker took a lot of influence from this movie, and this rewatch made me appreciate that movie more. And I don't really have too many issues with it. I will say my only real issue when it comes to this movie is that there are some characters here that aren't as developed as the main character, and they don't get as much closer screen time as they should, which is one of my only issues. And I will say that last negative here is not much to do anything with the movie, but rather how people will feel about the subject matter about stalkery and such. Because nowadays everyone is just so sensitive towards everything for one reason or the other. Because I don't think the subject matter here is going to work for everyone. And so that is something I will say is going to be a big downfall here. And for me, when it comes to the darker themes and some of the humor, while I will agree with the criticism here, I will say that I can see where Todd Phillips got his influences for the Joker movie from. So mainly two movies, The Taxi Driver and The Kings of Comedy, were his influences. But this is a highly disturbing film, but also a hilarious look at a man who is so persistent to achieve fame that he simply just will not say no. He won't accept the answer no. And once again, Robert De Niro is great in this movie. His character at the beginning of the movie, he's not very, I can't really describe. He's not a very happy guy, of course. He pretty much goes into a pretty deluded and highly unstable character, which you just have fun watching, but at the same time you hate seeing him watching, and seeing that the lengths that this character will go through here just to get what he wants is truly insane, but also too crazy, of course, and shows how relentless this character is. Wow. That is just crazy, and that is something that I'm like, holy shit, this character is insane. But I will also say, in terms of the way this movie is playing up exactly, and you're seeing how the movie is going, he loses his mind here, and you can definitely see how complex and how diabolical and how out of control this character is here. And what's crazy here is that this obsession is definitely what's going on in real life, especially in the age of social media. And it is blurred for a dark comedy. It's crazy, it's impulsive, it's obsessive. We're not sure whether his actions is done for real or a figment of the imagination. So that's something I think is actually pretty cool. And the debate ending here, I honestly think the scene is a reality, and he got away with it. And that shows how far the celebrity worship does come here. But the way he plays it, I think, is actually very good here. Robert De Niro does a great job. You also have the late Jerry Lewis as Jerry Langford, and I thought he did a very good job here. His performance is not boring at all, while deadpan is not really boring here. And I also will say the rest of the cast in this movie is also very good too. You got Sandra Bernard here, who's great. And I also really like the rest of the cast here. Diane Abbott, Shella Hack. This has also been turned into a musical, a stage musical, I think. But I'm not sure if anything really materialized with it. But the main draw here for me is that besides the performances, I also say this is kind of a light PG to rated R, but it didn't hurt the quality or end result because this movie goes into a lot of bonkers and crazy directions. And Scorsese is crazy. For 1982, he could do this in his own way and just show how people are. And while it wasn't popular for movies at the time to take on celebrity obsession, the way Scorsese handles it is dealt with confidence and competency and care. And this could actually happen in today's society, with people being hyperly obsessed in a bad way with celebrities. His direction and writing, I think, is also very well done, but also the cinematography and set and the costume design is really good for the time. And the really use of the soundtrack here is very well done. I also really like the score in here by Robbie Robertson. May you rest in peace. An hour and 48 minutes. This is one of Scorsese's shortest movies to date, and it is pretty short. I will say, if I say so myself, this is one of his shorter movies. So, wow. But I will say the way the movie's playing out, I'm sitting here. I'm not really supposed to like this character, but at the same time, there was parts here where I was actually really enjoying some of the craziness unfold. I'm like, what is this? What is going on here? And that is just something I thought was really taken into account, which was pretty interesting. Of course, I will say, like I said, my issues does stand. So those are really just my few gripes when I just said at the beginning, but those issues are not enough to cloud my enjoyment from the rest of this movie, because I will say the rest of this movie is entertaining, and I really like the way this movie was playing out. So overall, I have to say this is a fun but crazy but disturbing but a highly intense movie that I thought was actually a really competent film from Scorsese. Of course, while it deals with celebrity obsession and a lot of darker themes, and I don't think some people in today's day and age are gonna be able to handle this, I think this is one of his better films. It's definitely not one of my favorites, but it's definitely pretty high in his filmography that I enjoy. So ultimately, I'm gonna walk away and I will give this a recommendation. I'm just gonna warn you now, be prepared for some deeply disturbing craziness, and be prepared for an ending that it has been talked about so much since the movie came out. It's a fact that this movie was a bomb when it came out. This movie has actually garnered a cult status, and for a good reason. Like I said, it won't be for everyone, but I will say, ultimately, if you are a Martin Scorsese fan, I think you might quite enjoy this. This is actually a pretty competently well-made film, and this one, I am going to give it a much more lower grade than this, but it's still such a well done movie. And I will say, easily, watching this movie was definitely better than watching Vampire Diaries. I'm not sure how many people will take that grade because, like I said, the subject matter, but you know what? If you're a Scorsese fan, definitely check this out. This is definitely worth your time. Just be warned of what I said. You're dealing with things about celebrity worshiping and how far someone will go to act out of control, and I think you may have yourself a pretty decent time watching this. And for the last we're going to talk about in this 3 film review is going to be After Hours. This is once again directed by Martin Scorsese. All these are just directed by Martin Scorsese to make it easy on me. Written by Joseph Minion and stars Rosanna Arquette, Verna Bloom, Thomas Chong, Griffin Dunn, Linda Fiorentino, Terry Garr, the late Terry Garr, the late John Hur, Catherine O'Hara, and Richard Cheech Marin. And this is going to be a fun one to talk about, because this is another one I really do like. So the basic premise of After Hours is that we're following an uptown Manhattan office worker, Paul Hacker, as he ventures downtown for a hookup with a mystery woman, as he's desperate to escape his mind-numbing routine. This one is actually pretty interesting. I'll say this to say the least here. This is a weird, crazy film. But this is a lighthearted, dark comedy with an extra spring to step. It goes bonkers, it's weird. Some of it is quite dark, but also some of it harkens back to classic screwball comedy and leaves you with a wild and crazy enjoyment of a film that's definitely worth watching. So, wow, this is actually very crazy for me to talk about. I can't believe it, but we're actually talking about this, because you have a movie about a series of random encounters is very riveting, even if it's not one of my favorites of his. But this is one of his more overlooked films. This is a movie that he directs that is unlike a lot of his movies that he directs. This is blatantly absurd. It could be very bizarre, have so many bizarre scenarios, but I think the way this movie handles it is one of its most entertaining movies for sure. So wow, I will say this here. This was a lot entertaining. So it's definitely fun for what you're getting here. And so it's nice to see him go out of his comfort zone again. And I remember the first time I watched this, I was liking it, but I was also kind of confused when it comes to what this was going for. But I think the fact that you have Martin Scorsese wanting to go for something a little different when it turns this little gem, I think really does add to it. And only 97 minutes, pretty quick for what is going for her. Like I said, it goes into screwball comedy territory, which is kind of dead nowadays because a lot of people say comedy is dead, including myself, with a few exceptions. But at times, the movie goes into weird and crazy directions that I actually quite enjoyed. And I was just sitting there having me a grand old time with this one. This one just, for whatever reason, I'm sitting here, I'm actually kind of enjoying the stupidity of this. But it was also able to make the stories of a series of encounters intriguing and interesting. So I definitely give a lot of credit to where, of course, you definitely see where we're going for her, and I definitely quite liked a lot of what we're going for her. So I had to take a breather here. So, but I will say overall, the way this was playing out, I'm like, this is insane. But at the same time, I'm actually really liking this craziness here. But I will say the thing that sells it for me is the acting. The acting from everyone is great here. Now you have some people who has now passed away, like the late Terry Garr here, and the late John Hurd, who since passed away before this movie, me reviewing this. But I will say they do a very good job. I liked Tommy Chong. You have Marin, of course. So that was cool to see. You have Verna Bloom. She was good here. Griffin Dunn and Rosanna Arquette as the two leads and are actually very fun here. They have a lot of fun in the performances they are turning out. They get it down so right with the characters, and they both just have fun here, and it's just a lot of fun, and I was engaged here. The way the story was going, it was unpredictable, and it was also very crazy here. Paul's character is not a character to write home about, but I would say Griffin Dunn does a really good job here, and Rosanna Arquette, without spoilers, she does great as this mystery girl. I'm not gonna say this is a masterpiece or anything because it's just not on that level, but it is one of those movies where he steps out of his comfort zone. But I want to go to the rest of the cast here, of course. Like I said, the late Terry Garr's fantastic. Cheech and Chong. Linda Florentino is good here. I like her as an actress for the things I've seen her in. I don't know what happened after this and stuff like the original Men in Black. I don't know what happened. Do we not see her and stuff anymore? You also have Dick Miller, who is an icon, of course. Will Patton was great. I loved Robert Plunkett, Bronson Pinchot, Rocco Sisto. Just a lot of acting in this movie is really good. I like the cinematography by Michael Bauhaus. It's a very well shot film, a very well lit movie for the 80s. You can see what's going on, and you're just having fun with it. Thelma Shoemaker is a lot of fun with the crazy editing tricks, but in 97 minutes, she pulls it off. Howard Shore, his score was great. I think this was one of the very first times they ever collaborated, and it's got to be. But there is some good songs here, like I Don't Know Where I Stand, Chelsea Morning. You have Last Train to Clarksville, Angel Baby. We also have Robert and Johnny saying We Belong Together. Someone to Watch Over Me, I think that's a really good song. Body and Soul, Night and Day by Cole Porter. There's some good songs here and some good orchestral moments, but I think this is one of Howard Shore's first films, but because they did 6 movies where he did the music together, but this is just a very crazy score. But also I love the soundtrack here and the themes and motifs here. You get film noir, you also have a psychoanalytic view here. There's just a lot that's going on in this, so I can't really describe this one here, so it's one of those things you have to actually see to believe, especially with the black humor, and it's just entertaining to watch. I'm like, how is this so entertaining? I shouldn't be enjoying it so much, but in 97 minutes, it's just a lot of fun, and it's a blast throughout. Man, it's just a lot of fun. I will say there are some issues here. I will say there are some things, if you're a socially awkward person or someone who has anxiety, of course, you're going to be pretty stressed out for some of this stuff here. And some of it can be a little silly. And for 97 minutes, some things don't get a lot of time to breathe, which is another one of the issues I could see people having with this. But you know what? I'm just sitting here having a good time and enjoying it here. And it just knows exactly what it is. I like that the fact the movie knows what it is. Some actors get a little sidelined, which is something I will say is a criticism. I wish some of these actors had a lot more to do. So that's just something I think you could have fixed. And I will also say, I think there are some moments here that is just kind of draggy in just a few parts. But for 97 minutes, I'm sitting there, I'm like, you know what, this is cool. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying it. Also, no one likes to sleep or keep their voices down. I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? Ain't y'all supposed to be asleep or anything like that? It's just little small issues like that, you know? But it just shows that Martin Scorsese, he goes into any genre and he can just deliver just like that, even if it's not great. It's not as serious as some of his other movies, but I don't think this one gets enough credit as it should. And it's another good example of how multifaceted Scorsese can be. It's not a perfect film, of course. There are some slow moments, the characters get underutilized, and I will say some of the screwball comedy and such isn't going to work for everyone, but if you're willing to give this a shot and see Martin Scorsese once again go out of his comfort zone, I'd welcome you to give this a chance. While again, it's not my favorite of his, I gotta say, this is one I will have so much enjoyment watching again. So for that, I'm gonna give this a highly recommendation. It is worth the shot. Just know what you're getting yourself into, and I think you will enjoy it a lot more than I did. Or just as much as I did, if you're willing to try. So yeah. And with that being said, that is gonna conclude this little 3-in-1 review series. So it's finally good to get back to the Martin Scorsese reviews. We're not quite done yet. I still have a few more I need to go over and review, and also some revisit. So that being said, I will say, in terms of the film, this is a movie I think this is something I actually do. I might actually do this more often, where I put at least 3 or 4 or 6, or at least a few movies in one video to not be so overwhelmed, especially when it comes to reviewing new releases. Except for what Joshua watches, or Epictastic watches by Josh, or a 2020 or a catch-up video, to make it easier on myself, besides solo stuff and quick reviews. So if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to look out for more. There will be more coming soon. Well, that's going to do it for the video that you just watched. If you want to see more, my channel icon is up here. If you want to see more content from me, all my social medias are right here in this end card. I will also leave a playlist and a video here for you to see what the channel is about. As always, acknowledge me, stay epitastic, join the epitasticness, and you guys keep it cool.